What's going on, guys? It's Blichter here, and I want to talk to you about a Druid build that I made in the Diablo 4 beta. Druid is, I think anybody who's played Druid or reviewed Druid thinks it is the weakest class, and I tend to agree with that. Starting out on a Druid feels pretty awful. Their kit is lacking. Their minions are not very inspired. A lot of their skills just feel a bit lackluster. There's all sorts of A and B type synergies between werewolf and werebear that end up just being clunky to play around. But that doesn't mean that we can't try and make a build around Druid. And I've made a build that I think feels fairly coherent and has some, I'm fairly certain, has some unintended strength, particularly with regards to group play and notably the world boss. This is a hardcore character, so the gearing may be a little bit more defensive than you are used to, but we're going to go through this in basically three parts. So we're going to go through the skill tree first, then we'll go through gear, and finally we'll do some gameplay at the end. So let's look at the build. I'll just say as a theme, this build is based around lightning damage and crits. And there's some very strong effects that can happen with those. So we're playing Storm Strike as a basic attack. With the way this is built, we end up using this a lot. If we could get more points in it, even though it's only a 2% damage upgrade per point, would be very good. Also, getting another source of sustainable vulnerable would be very, very good. Because then we could spec out of the vulnerable and into the additional targets. But at level 25, this is what we got. So chance to immobilize, chance to vulnerable. That's pretty good for a basic attack, and it does chain, and it does give you damage reduction, which is fantastic and hardcore. Tornado, we've got this maxed out. One extra point from gloves. We have a chance to spawn additional tornadoes, and we slow enemies. You could also take the vulnerable, which is quite good as well, but we do basic attack quite quickly, so keeping vulnerable up is not necessarily a problem, and this enables all of the damage mods that are against slowed enemies. We're also playing with increased max spirit, which doesn't matter, but we've got some core skills, cost more spirit, but deal additional damage. You can also take abundance to generate more spirit if you're having issues keeping your spirit high enough to be casting lots of tornadoes. 9% crit chance against close enemies. That's quite good just because we do have a lot of crit scaling, like I mentioned. Running Earthen Bulwark with the Unstoppable. That's basically just for the Unstoppable. We also get some movement speed for being unstoppable from a legendary, but that's sort of tangential. You want the Unstoppable regardless. Cyclone Armor is a really strong one-pointer to just throw on your bar for hardcore characters. This also turns into an AoE buff, so if you have the correct legendary. So this ends up being 20% overall damage reduction, but we'll talk about that a bit more in gear. Companions, you can see we have none. These points, aside from this point here, where you just have an automatic lightning bolt on a timer, which is really, really quite bad, these points are all fairly good. If we could max this out, we could drop the vulnerable from our basic attack, which would be, well, I suppose we'd need to take the 1 point in this, but we don't need to max this out. This is extremely strong. This is a huge source of damage for us, so a lucky hit against vulnerable enemies where they take a lightning strike. And we attack really, really quickly, and tornado hits really quickly, so this procs all the time. Hurricane, if we had more points, we could be going into the vulnerability on here as well, which would also enable us to drop it from our basic, but not enough points. Enemies affected by Hurricane deal less damage. Very strong for group play. This has reasonable uptime. It's about 40% right now, but if you could get some cooldown reduction and get it up closer to 50%, I think it would be quite strong. Currently playing with Petrify. This is just to enable a legendary property. Cataclysm is much weaker than it needs to be for an ultimate compared to some of the other classes' ultimates. You can get a vulnerable on it, but it's a long cooldown, and it just doesn't do enough. Petrify is not necessarily any better, but it's an earth skill, and we get a fair bit of crit chance for our tornadoes and basic attacks because we're using earth skills. So let's talk about the gear. We have basic skill damage reduction. This is basically just a staple, in my opinion, on any hardcore character. 25% damage reduction for basic attacking, that's just basically always up, so may as well take it. This extends the duration of our Earthen Bulwark. This is not great. We don't kill enemies with earth skills. This could be better. An option is something like, I'm like 90% sure I've got one here, something like this. Gain bonus amount on your Earthen Bulwark for each enemy CC. That should apply to your tornadoes, so we could swap that for something like that. But this makes your Earthen Bulwark last longer, and we do have move speed scaling with Earthen Bulwark, so I've been using this just for mobility, but it's not mandatory. This is mandatory, and this is probably the most impactful legendary power for playing tornado builds. This makes them homing tornadoes. The homing is not super tight. They still cruise around the room. Sometimes they target a random enemy that's off screen and they just take off on you and don't hit what you want them to hit. But you, in my opinion, you basically need this. I tried playing without it, and tornado does not feel correct without this. So you want this, and I don't think the number of targets matters all that much. This is the Cyclone Armor buff that I was talking about. It also improves physical damage reduction, making it a 20% overall damage reduction, and it's applied to nearby allies. So this is quite good for group play. It's also just strong. 20% overall damage reduction is pretty strong. This is the unstoppable movement speed scaling I was talking about with Earthen Bulwark. That's kind of why we're running this. This increases the duration, so we just get that move speed for longer. For weapons, there are a couple options. I should say, this isn't necessarily optimal. There is a bug right now where you can't imprint onto a totem, so this isn't necessarily what I would want. We're running basic skills gain attack speed. That's really good for for spirit generation. I think optimally in this slot, we would like to be running our 33% damage bonus. Basically this bonus, but on a one-hander, it would be reduced by 100%. But we'd want to be running this bonus on an off-hander and probably fitting this in somewhere else. This is a fantastic legendary power. Crits with core skills increase your attack speed by 51% for 3 seconds. This is boosted by 50% because it's on an amulet, but that is a ton of attack speed, and the nature of tornadoes is they last a while, so they can hit multiple times and crit, and that'll proc this attack speed, which really just gets you attacking fast. Between this and this, our basic attack hits extremely quickly, which enables us to cast more tornadoes because we're generating more. A lot of our damage is coming from our 2 rings, the legendary powers, so crits with storm skills charge air around you, causing a lightning strike to periodically hit an enemy in an area. This isn't necessarily insanely strong, but it is some free AoE damage, which is helpful. This lucky hit property is absolutely fantastic, and this is what I'm fairly certain was bugged for me against the world boss. I believe, just from my testing, that this is applying to a mob, and it's proccing from all damage dealt to the mob. Not just your damage. I believe this is proccing on all damage dealt by party members, non-party members. I've killed the world boss on T2 4 or 5 times, primarily on my Barbarian, which is substantially stronger than this character. My fastest world boss kill was on this character, and I saw this legendary power absolutely going off. It was just proccing 308 damage repeatedly. You could hear it. The sound effect kept going off. The damage numbers, I believe, were showing up for other people. I was playing with a friend, but this is really, really strong when you're playing solo. But right now, it's absolutely broken for group play. Because it's just, when it gets applied, it's just 308 extra flat damage added to every attack that anybody does. So this is currently the MVP. This is like the most important thing. You want to keep this up as much as possible, and the best way to apply it is to attack very fast. So that is the gear. Let's do some content. So as you can see, Earthen Barrier does give us the move speed bonus. We're using it for mobility. So when you run into a pack, you want to be getting some tornadoes out because they're going to start boosting your attack speed. This isn't necessarily very impressive until you get a proc. As soon as you get a proc on that ring that I was referring to, you'll start doing a bunch of damage. But it is a little bit underwhelming until then. Once it goes off, like I said, our tornadoes hit very fast and we hit very fast. So currently a lot of the damage is strictly based around that and dependent on that. We'll just skip that for video purposes. So you can see there, as soon as that legendary power starts going off, we start doing a bunch of damage. We do also have, just as I guess I didn't talk about the totem. So when we cast an Earth skill, we get extra crit chance on our Storm skills for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is pretty short. I don't even think a tornado has expired after 4 seconds, so that's not really super important, but considering you can't imprint onto totems, that was the best that I had. So yeah, I'll just mention, aside from that, I do have, I think this is a level 24 required weapon that I upgraded prior to the patch, which is why it only says level 20, but some of this gear is like slightly over leveled from what you would get just from normal content. Some of it is from Oscar. So, but this is baseline level 16, so this character isn't super juiced up as far as the item power on the gear. But yeah, just thought I'd give people a bit of a look into potentially what the Druid's capable of at max level. Sort of how some of the Druid builds could be successful. Like I said, I do still think the Druid is really, really far behind during the leveling process, and it's not necessarily even caught up with topical legendaries. But yeah, just a archetype I've been having some fun playing, and I thought it was worth sharing. So